Today we are talking about dietitian services at Smith Performance Center and how nutrition fits into the bigger picture of health, performance, recovery, and long-term progress. I'm here with Jackie Hatchew, a registered dietitian at SPC. Jackie works with active adults who are trying to improve energy, recovery, performance, body composition, fueling consistency, and the way nutrition supports their daily life and training. A lot of people hear dietitian and immediately think of meal plans, macros, calories, or being told exactly what to eat. Those things may come up, but that's not really the role of nutrition services at SPC. At SPC, we use a phase-based model for physical therapy, strength training, and nutrition. The goal is to understand the real problem first, then build the habits, skills, and structures needed to make progress. From there, we want people to become more independent and have a long-term system so they can actually maintain. So we're going to have a conversation with Jackie today about that. So I want to start with, how would you explain the role of dietitian SPC, especially as someone who thinks nutrition services are just a meal plan?
Yeah, that's a great question, Craig. So dietitian services at SPC are much more than just a meal plan. While some people might benefit from a meal plan for a very short period of time, we find that those often aren't sustainable long-term options. And my job as a dietitian at SPC is to make sure that whatever goals you have and you want to achieve, you're able to achieve, but they also last, right? I'm focused on a much more long-term based approach, and for that means we have to get into the nitty-gritty of a lot of things in someone's daily life. So a meal plan can address one small issue, which is the understanding of what to eat, right? But as a dietitian, my job is to make sure that you're able to follow your food needs, your nutrition needs, and whatever plan or habits we put into place for a longer period of time. So it doesn't just assess the knowledge of, okay, I know I need to have this much protein. My question that I'm going to ask is, how do we get that much protein into your daily lifestyle and your daily habits? And then what do we do if your daily habits change? Because we know that life is not normal. So I've had a lot of people who come in and say, well, Jackie, I can do this. I'm just going to have my breakfast, lunch, dinner, and my snack here. They come back the next week. They're like, well, I had a weird week this week. And I always say, well, every single week is weird. That's just life. Yeah, you know, you might.
That's normal.
That's normal, right? And so my job as the dietitian is to build habits with people and educate them on understanding how to deal with those weird times of life or crazy periods of life while still reaching their goals in the long term.
Why do you think it is that meal plans, because that is like the number one thing I feel that we hear people want. What is it about? Is the meal plan, for some reason, is it heavily marketed? Or, I mean, what's the idea around it? Is it really just reducing the variables of reducing their decisions? What's the driver on that one?
Yeah, I think that it's a combination of a lot of things. So first of all, they are extremely marketed because you can sell a meal plan at a specific calorie amount, specific protein amount for a said weight of someone, right? And you can market that and sell it to a lot of people and only create one meal plan, right? So it makes sense that it can be heavily marketed.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. Yeah.
But And it does take the guesswork out of a lot of things. So if you know, okay, I'm only allowed to have XYZ, then I'm going to eat XYZ. However, it's very unlikely you're going to eat XYZ for the rest of your life. I don't think we're going to have chicken, broccoli, and rice every single day for lunch.
I've tried that. It was not enough. It did not go well for my body.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and are you currently eating chicken, broccoli, and rice?
No, that's not really what I eat. Not at all. Yeah.
I know because I work with you. So I hope that's not what you're telling me your body eat for lunch every single day.
I did go through a time period where that's what I tried, though. And what's funny is it seemed easy at the time, but then I found that I had incredible GI distress when I was trying to follow that. And then it seemed like I had no energy whatsoever the whole time.
which is a very common thing when people try to follow a structured one-size-fits-all meal plan, right? Because it doesn't actually take into account what your body specifically is able to digest. It doesn't take into account your specific activity level, what times you're eating things, if you're exercising, what you're eating before exercise and after exercise. A meal plan, if you're eating chicken, broccoli, rice for lunch 3 hours away from your exercise, that is doing nothing to fuel that exercise, right? But we also know, like specifically in your instance, if somebody struggles with GI issues and can't digest a specific food. For example, broccoli is a really, really healthy, it's a great food. It has lots of micronutrients. However, sometimes it can cause gas for people or bloating. And so if you do go and try to eat that every single day, or even just in your regular diet, it's not going to work for everyone.
I would hope that we're not saying I had bad gas at all. Just want to make sure that was like
I think we'd have to ask your wife, Sarah, about that one. I don't know if I'm the right one to answer
I
there.
feel like you answered that. It was like, you quit eating broccoli because you had really
well, you
bad
said GI
gas.
distress.
I did say GI distress. That's
you're
totally
the one
true.
calling it
I'm
out,
the one
not
throwing
me.
it out there. Yeah. So if you would say somebody's coming in and they can tell that they have a problem, what would you say you're delivering instead of a meal plan? Because I think people, when they hear of a product or they hear of nutrition services, it really does seem like it equates 1-to-1 to a meal plan. What is it that you're actually offering?
Yeah. So what I'm offering is understanding the person and what their true barriers and issues are. A meal plan might solve the knowledge issue. However, a lot of people's issues aren't knowledge. It's I need help understanding how to fit this specific meal into my day. I need help understanding how can I develop this habit when this is happening in life. So I'm offering habit building strategies.
I mean, that is kind of it though, right?
Yeah.
You're building so you're building skills, you're helping them build habits. What else? What other things are you taking them through?
So we're understanding and getting to the root cause of why many of their nutrition choices are happening. Because it's not always the fact of, well, I didn't know that I should eat this amount of protein. That can be a piece of it. But the issue might be, and what we'll figure out is, okay, if I know I have to eat this much protein, how are we actually going to get that into your day in a sustainable long-term way? So figuring out meal structures. So I don't often offer meal plans, but sometimes we can go through like a meal timing and what's going to work best at specific times of the day for that person. And we can go over ideas of what they can have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or these specific snack times to help reach their goals.
That sounds so simplistic, but that was a game changer for me. The meal timing. Actually having a really clear schedule and realizing that some of the fatigue, for example, that I was having on a day-to-day basis, which I hate feeling tired. I hate that feeling so much.
I don't know who doesn't hate feeling tired.
I'm clearly unique in that I don't like to feel tired. But that was interesting because I would actually say when we first started working together, that was the thing that I noticed the biggest immediate difference was when I had food. And I think partially it's because I've read and seen so many things around, for example, intermittent fasting. And I would even say and I've tried it occasionally, and I noticed that I would definitely feel more tired following a schedule like that. And then having long periods throughout the day where I wouldn't consume any calories, how much of an impact that had on my state of fatigue was incredible.
Yeah.
And then fixing that, being consistent with it, has mostly taken away that fatigue issue that I was having. And that was just one aspect of what you do.
I think that's a really interesting point because if we think by definition, right, food is energy. And so if we're going a long period of time without food or without that intake of energy, it's likely that your body is going to feel tired or low energy. It's not going to happen for every single person. So intermittent fasting can work for some people, but for a lot of people, specifically if you're trying to get a lot of important work done at certain times of the day, if you're working out, for example, early in the morning and you're fasting, then you might have a detriment on that exercise and then you might feel exhausted afterwards. And so while it can work for some people, I don't recommend it to most or all people, specifically if you're focused on energy levels throughout the day. But that structured times of eating that we set up for you is kind of similar and takes the idea of the meal plan that a lot of people are looking for and wanting. Because I don't think it's necessarily a meal plan that people are looking for, but they are looking for that structure that can be provided throughout the day. What's interesting, though, is like we just talked about, structure isn't the same every single day. So while it changes. So while we try to have breakfast around 8 a.m. every day, let's say, as an example, okay, what happens if I sleep until 9 that day? Oh no, my breakfast schedule is thrown off. As a dietitian, I'm going to work to make sure that you're still getting the fuel that you need into what's appropriate for that day and how to not let that throw you completely off your game.
I like that. So let's just say, I think it might be useful for us to get specific, but let's just say somebody comes in and they have a variety of different issues. I guess that'd be a good place to start. What things are areas or issues that would be a good thing to see a dietitian for?
Yeah, so I think there's a wide variety, like we said. So low energy levels is a very common one that we see. Poor recovery for performance, or plateaus in performance, or plateaus in muscle building or strength gains, experiencing GI issues. So weird bloating sensations, not being able to understand what foods might be causing issues or foods that don't cause issues, and trying to get an understanding of like what you're actually able to eat. I've had people who have a lot of fear around adding any sort of specific foods in, or have eliminated many foods, whether that be from, oh, this caused an issue one time in my life, or there's a lot of nutrition information out there.
Like an insane amount.
Yeah. And so a lot of people are just confused as what do I follow? What do I keep in? What do I take out? And so just to get a deeper understanding of what can I actually have that's going to benefit my body and my health goals.
So let's just say somebody identifies with one of the problems that you just listed. Where do you start when they come in to see you? Like, what is your actual process? What's their first visit to 2 visits? What do those actually look like?
So in the first 1 to 2 visits, I'm really just trying to get to know the person on a whole body level. So I'm going to learn about them, kind of what does their day typically look like, but I also think it's important to understand a wide variety of habits and medical history, because that has a lot to do with your nutrition habits or the nutrition choices that you make. And so when I first meet someone, we'll go through medical history, if there are previous injuries, if there are specific lab values that might be higher or lower than what we would expect or want. And we'll also go over previous diet history, right? So a lot of people might have tried fad diets in the past or have beliefs around certain foods or diets. So I think it's really important that we cover that as well. But then we do go into habits. So what does your day look like? What are your exercise routines? What are your movement routines? Are you up and walking around all day? Are you a little bit more sedentary? I think it's important that we understand those too. But we also go over sleep. So we know sleep has a huge impact. And then stress is a really, really big thing for a lot of people when it comes to their daily habits and nutrition choices. And so I think it's important that we cover stress, and if people alter their fueling if they are more stressed or less stressed. For example, some people might eat more when they're stressed, and some people might have a difficult time eating at all when they're stressed. And so that's an individualized approach that we need to make sure that we plan for when we are meeting as a team to discuss how we're actually going to help them reach their goals.
I mean, I do think that's something that hit me quite a bit when we were kind of working through my own history with everything, and it was the depth around a lot of the stuff that was a little bit surprising, like from my like really digging through my current health, things I was noticing, but also my habits. But you went through just an insane amount of things in the first visit, and it was a more complete like history than than what I feel like physical therapy has to do, definitely more than what our strength coaches have to do. So it is a kind of a unique process compared to, I think, a lot of other healthcare professionals that I've kind of interacted with.
Yeah, what I find is that if I can get a lot of that information in the first visit to 2 visits, that really helps me structure their long term plan. And so it might feel a little bit different than an initial visit with a different provider or a different dietitian or physical therapist or strength coach. But the reason that I do such a comprehensive evaluation at the start is to truly understand the person as a whole and what their true root causes and issues are. Because it's very unlikely that the only root cause is knowledge, right? And so by getting that full in depth understanding, it allows me to know over time all the things we need to work on and identify what things are most important to work on first, second, third.
Have you seen any consistent themes that people come in with that in this beginning phase when you're building through that you see over and over again? Like for PTs, I think it's kind of a joke at this point, but everybody is tight and stretches, and it's probably the biggest mistake I see across the board, across rehab, probably performance as well. Do you have anything like that within your field and
I
your
would
expertise?
say people are very low energy and then they continue to cut calories because they also want to reduce weight.
Oh, go more into that. So they're low energy, but at the same time they're reducing their fuel intake.
Which often correlates, right?
Okay.
Because it makes sense that most people, when you come to see a dietitian, or most people in general, with the way that our culture has kind of portrayed body image, is that people want to slim down or lose a little bit of fat or lose a little bit of weight. So it's a very common thing, but then they will cut calories to do that, maybe at times of the day when it's not ideal, and they'll be exhausted for the rest of the day. And we've talked about, the doom loop of cutting calories, feeling exhausted or not reaching your goals, working out harder and working out more, and then just feeling exhausted again. And so that's a very common one that I see. But low energy overall is very, very common in a lot of people.
I think it's almost like an epidemic, to be honest. Now that I've been asking that with almost every client at this point, and it is across the board, everybody reports some level of excessive fatigue or more fatigue than what they remember experiencing in the past, which is kind of scary, to be honest. It's weird how tired people feel.
It is. And it's an interesting one, too, because it is very subjective.
Uh-huh.
And so am I more tired today than I was yesterday? Like, there are many things that go into it, right? So sleep can be a huge piece. If you have exercise, stress, like we talked about, can be a huge piece. And nutrition can also be a huge contributor to reducing or to improving your energy levels. However, it's not always the only cause. And so that's why it's also important that we do this full comprehensive evaluation to understand, is nutrition a piece of this? Often it is, but sometimes we understand that while nutrition, if you want to feel 100% energy, right? But you're having all of these factors that are contributing to it. Maybe it's dehydration, maybe it's poor sleep, maybe it's limiting your calories, you're limiting your amount of food. Maybe it's an additional family stress that you have, where all of these things are contributing to or taking away from, I guess, your energy levels throughout the day. And so solving just one of those might not cure everything, right?
Yeah.
But even if we can get your energy levels from, let's say you were at a 50 before, and through some of the nutrition habit changes, we can get you up to a 70 to 75, that's a very significant improvement.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge improvement, to be honest. So the idea in some of these is you're highlighting the totality of the problem and you're seeing all the things that could be contributors. So you've outlined the whole problem. What then? What happens next?
Yes. So once we've outlined the problem, it's also important that we understand what are the contributing habits to that problem and start to address it from there.
Can you do like a specific on that? Like what's a contributing habit with like the fatigue thing, for example?
Yes. Let's say somebody comes in and they have fatigue every single day around 3:00. For example, let's say the reason for that is, or this person's current lifestyle is that they wake up, have coffee in the morning, but skip breakfast, very busy, trying to get to work quickly, have a small snack in mid-afternoon because they're starving around 10 o'clock. And then they have a small lunch that they packed and then don't eat again until they get home for dinner.
My God. So they've had barely any food at this point. They sound like a horrible person.
It is
No,
not
just
a
that's
horrible person.
That's not what your segue is. Okay,
That's not what my
but they
segue is.
but they have totally. It sounds like they've had a small maybe snack midday, and then maybe a small lunch, and that's all the food that they've had.
Yeah, which
Okay.
if you think about it, it's very common for a lot of people. Where there's a very, very many people who skip breakfast. Okay, I skip breakfast. That's all right. I'm gonna have a yogurt for a snack, and then I'm gonna have my sandwich and apple for lunch. You know, that's very common. But for that person, it might not be enough, and then they're exhausted at 3 o'clock. And often I would say that's because they're using a lot of energy just sitting there being a person and living. And so they haven't actually had enough fuel to allow their bodies to continue going at the high brain power operating level that they would like to.
It brings me back to my background with exercise physiology and just the idea of all the background systems that are working at all times that are still burning calories. I think that's also something that we don't think enough about actually how much energy we're consuming even when we're sitting there just to keep your body running,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, your body always has that resting metabolic rate because there are many, many chemical reactions that are occurring within your body just to have you breathe and lift your arm when you're working, type on your computer that a lot of people don't realize. So, for like smartwatches are a huge thing in life today, and they often track your active calories, not necessarily your resting metabolic rate. So I've had people come in who are like, well, Jackie, I've burned 300 calories today because that's what my watch says, and I've eaten 300 calories. So I'm at even and I'm doing good, but then they're exhausted. And it's because, yes, they've burned an additional 300 calories from the resting metabolic rate. However, and they've eaten that much, but they haven't been able to make up the food that they needed or the fuel that they needed to support just like the activities of daily living.
So they were trying to match calories in, calories out based off of just the calories expended during activity, which would be not as many as you'd expect, right? I mean, that's dramatically less than
what they need.
what they need. It's less than what their metabolic system is going to basically be burning in the background.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so now you've got an outline of their history. You have their habits. You've now had a good idea of what their goals are. What do you do as you move into phase 2? What's the purpose of phase 2, and what are you looking for in that phase?
Yeah. So phase 2 is all about solving the initial issue or initial problem. Phase 2 is when we are going to try out some different habits. I'm going to educate people throughout this whole entire phase because while education is often not the only limiting factor, it is very important that people understand why we are making the changes that we're making because I don't want them to need me forever, right?
Yeah.
And so phase 2 is educating them on why we're making specific habits and a little bit of nutrition education and what specifically is going on within their body. But every single session that we have in phase 2 is always going to be setting some different goals. So we might try eating breakfast in the morning for that specific person, right? And that might go well, or they might feel sick in the morning. And it could have been because of the food that they chose, or it could be because they were physically just actually feeling sick that morning.
Oh, so you can have sometimes where you're reintroducing food and makes them feel nauseous?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow. They'll feel like they're going to vomit?
To an extent. Again, that's all subjective as well. But then we dive deeper into that, right? So phase 2 is all about making the goals. So if we try, let's say I'm going to increase my breakfast, or I'm going to increase my lunch, or I'm going to add a snack here. Okay, let's try it. Let's see if it's going well, or let's see if it's not going well. And we're often going to have habits. We're going to have some that go well, and we're always going to have one or two that don't go well. And then it's diving in and figuring out why that didn't go well, right? If they felt nauseous in the morning, for example, what was it that they ate? Was it something that was a little bit higher fat that just didn't sit well in their stomach? Do they have digestive issues? And the food that we added in the breakfast was something that they just, if they ate it at any time throughout the day, they might have felt nauseous or sick or bloated. And so it's doing the habit, but then understanding why that's not working. Or did we make a goal to add breakfast in the morning and they were running out the door trying to get their kids to school and they never got the breakfast in that week? Then maybe the items that we described for breakfast weren't going to work. We might have to do a quicker grab and go. We might have to have something in their purse or in their car or truck just to have it available so they can actually get some fuel in. So it's understanding the person, trying some things out, and then if that doesn't work, figuring out why and addressing that.
Yeah, it's been shocking to see most of my issues are processes that I never examined. So the way that I would do things basically predisposed me to most of the issues I've been dealing with, which has been pretty surprising.
Yeah. Can you give an example?
Well, for example, the whole idea around, I feel like one of my biggest issues, I'll work all day. And there are some times where I would have, telling that person being a horrible person because I'd done that before.
I was going to say, Craig, this is,
yeah.
What do you mean? I definitely heard you repeat this in a dietary recall.
The exact same thing. Well, you get busy and I didn't realize how often I would set up situations where it was impossible to carry out a good habit. And there were habits that, because of things I did literally the day before, made the next day dramatically harder. That was very surprising how often that was my issue. So to get specific, I don't have any variety in my breakfast anymore. I do the exact same thing, and I found that makes the morning less stressful for me, having to think at all about what food I'm going to eat. So I always have the exact same thing. And then I know that I have to have the lunch and my afternoon snack already ready to go. Doing that at all in the morning means that I won't actually probably carry it out. And then the last habit that was a game changer for me was I increased how much I was eating at lunch, which dramatically reduced how much I eat at night. And my biggest issue, I think, was how much I was eating at night. And totally changed my thoughts, because it had nothing to do in most cases around the actual food I was eating. It was completely around my behaviors around when I ate. And now
how much you ate when you ate.
Yeah. Because I don't even have to think about it now, because I feel full at night. So it was really weird to see that's what made the change, not me being ultra specific on counting calories. It was very high consistency with these specific meal times. And I think it corrected probably the biggest issue I had, which is how much I was eating at night, which was a lot, which was, it was more than I would have expected.
Yeah. Which is very common, specifically if we're taking the example of somebody who eats very little earlier on in the day, has low energy. By the time they get home, it's often the dinner that's extremely large, or they'll experience nighttime snacking, where they might come in and think their true issue is, okay, well, I'm tired throughout the day and I eat too much at night. But the true issue is that they didn't have enough earlier on in the day to sustain themselves, and their body was screaming and craving for calories that it wanted and needed. And so of course it was going to be hungry. Of course it was going to be hungry at night. And it's not that their motivation to reduce those nighttime cravings was the issue. It was that their body needed extra fuel, and it was going to find a way to get it in no matter what. And so instead of trying to be more strict on nighttime fueling and doing strategies to completely reduce or cut out that nighttime snack, which sometimes that can be important, but for a lot of people, it's actually, no, I need to add food earlier on so your body doesn't get scared and want stuff later. And so I think it's interesting to look at it from a whole day perspective, because a lot of people get really scared if I say, well, the best way to reach your goals or to lose weight is to add food.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. I've heard that. I mean, I've heard that be a pushback quite a bit from conversations with clients for sure.
I think that is my biggest pushback. But I think it's also important when the clients come back and we're actually able to add food and increase the amount that they're eating earlier on in the day. It in turn reduces the amount that they're eating at night.
Yep.
And overall, the intake is actually less than previously. It takes some work and it's not easy and it's scary, and I understand that. But the big thing is that it actually does work, and then you feel a lot better throughout the day when you do that.
So say you start to get your initial processes in place, your skills in place. How long does it take to achieve any goals or any will you actually see an outcome or a change? How long does that actually take?
Well, I think it's very, very individualized and dependent on the person. Not only on the person's issues, but also how quickly they're able to implement the habits that we discuss, or how many things really are contributing to their underlying root cause. And so I would say within the first couple of weeks is when we can understand where I would consider success is within the first 2 weeks, can you actually implement the goals that we are setting, right? Because we are developing habits, we're working through new things that you're doing in your daily lifestyle. And so implementing habits within the first 2 weeks is something that we really truly look for. But also we can impact your energy levels within the first 2 to 4 weeks, and you can notice an improvement in your energy throughout the day. Then kind of moving forward to like maybe 2 to 4 weeks, that's when we start to look at developing actual consistent habits. So are you having to think about these things that we're implementing all the time? Are your energy levels consistently stable? It's very likely that you're going to see some sort of crazy week within a month, right? Like there's always a day that's off or not off. And are you actually able to maintain those habits? And we can start to see maybe a little bit of change on the scale, right? So we might notice a little bit of weight loss, very much, or weight gain, depending on the person, as well as proper hydration is also one of those early on settings.
Like as in making sure that you're getting the hydration amount that you need. Yeah, because it was interesting to me for my experience. It took it was almost instantaneous, the energy component, once I added the food, increasing my food intake at lunch and then having a mid-afternoon snack. That seemed to make a huge difference. But my overall just feeling much better, much higher performance, that took more like 4 to 6 weeks where I really started to being able to tell from performance measures what I was doing, out exercising, sparring, all that stuff. A clear difference after about 6 weeks.
I would say 4 to 6 weeks is that range where you can see some of the performance benefits.
Okay.
If we're looking at like the 8 weeks plus, that's when we really see some body composition changes, which can be difficult to assess and measure, but you can see significant muscle growth and fat loss within about 8 weeks of consistent habit change. Again, that's very dependent and individualized on the person, but it's also the biggest thing that most people want when they come to see me.
Instant weight loss.
Instant weight loss or instant muscle gain, or I just want to instantly feel better. And it's tough because it takes a while to see those true changes and impacts. So consistency for about 2 months is when we can really see that. But it's difficult because before 2 months, if you're not seeing the changes, it's a lot easier for people to give up or stop trying.
I've noticed that. It is. I mean, I think that's actually the trickiest part, because if somebody comes in and they say that their main problem is they want to lose weight. And if you're telling me it's going to take 2 months, but not only that, in that 2 months, we're working a whole bunch of habits, it can be one of those things where people don't think it's worth the time, or they'll think that it's a mistake to be coming in. Right?
Absolutely. And with the weight loss specifically, some people can see changes a little bit earlier on, but often there's some metabolic things that have to happen under the surface for that weight loss to be truly sustainable and
Sustained?
And sustained.
Yeah.
Like if we take fad diets, for example, right? Because you can lose weight pretty fast. you can lose weight on a fad diet in a week. You can lose it in 2 weeks, right? Maybe you can drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks on a fad diet or just a very restrictive diet, very restrictive calorie eating, or maybe following a meal plan. But often that weight is not going to stay off.
Why?
Because you haven't actually addressed the root cause.
Yeah. So each time that like when we're talking about this, that's once again the wrong application of us. It's like a solution that's actually not targeted at the right problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, over and over again. And I think that is like what I've noticed with the frustrating part. I think with especially with the success of the fasting. Just from an orthopedic standpoint, it's been wild to see how I think that we get way more stress reactions, stress fractures, tendon injuries. Those issues seem to be way worse now. And it does seem like there's a strong relationship to people's history of pretty intense fasting as a piece of it, you know?
Which if your body is going a long period of time without enough fuel, especially if you are working out or you're strength training or you're running or you're biking, right? There's additional responses that are needed for recovery from your body, but if you're not getting them when you need to, then it's very unlikely to actually be able to repair and recover those things.
Now, when you talk about, to go back to the phases, you're in phase 2, it seems when we've discussed about it previously, it's a really big phase. And I know you have a portion of it where it's these beginning goals that they're achieving. What tells you that they're moving through phase 2 well, and when does phase 2 end, and when does phase 3 begin?
So phase 2 is an extremely long process.
Okay.
Often because I do want to meet or reach most of their goals within that phase 2. While we are trying out a bunch of different habits, right, to see if someone is progressing properly through phase 2, are they actually able to maintain and sustain those habits? Are they getting challenged on those habits in certain times? And are they able to maintain that? Or do they have an idea and understanding of how to maybe address the challenge and prepare for it in advance? Because I wouldn't want to move someone from phase 2 to phase 3 if they haven't been challenged on their goal yet. Because then it's very likely that if they're already in phase 3 and we're not meeting as frequently, that if they are challenged, then they aren't going to know what to do during that challenge. And so I always want someone to be challenged a little bit, but then still be able to maintain their habits. So, for example, if somebody's goal is weight loss or body composition changes, I would want to see that we're successful with some of that weight loss and that they're gone through some challenges and still been able to maintain some of the goals that we've previously set, or maybe had a little bit of a fallback with the challenge, but then we're able to get immediately back on track even without our meeting. Or we'll talk about how to get back on track for that meeting. And so I want to see some success with the goals, and I want to see the goals challenged a little bit before moving into phase 3. Where phase 2 is where primarily most of the education happens. I want someone to understand their body and understand why I'm making a decision or choice to set a specific goal for that week. And so once I feel that somebody has a pretty good understanding of that and is able to kind of make some of the changes and goals that I might suggest that they make prior to me even making that, that's when I know somebody is successful and can kind of move into that phase 3. And then in phase 3, is when the client is primarily leading their nutrition journey. So I've educated them well enough in phase 2 that they have an idea of what they should be doing and how to adjust their habits and eating accordingly when they are challenged or when they're going longer periods of time without meeting me. But I'm still here as that accountability piece because we know accountability is extremely important to reach any sort of goal or habit from a health perspective.
Well, so phase 2, you're giving them the education based off of what you found in phase 1, their main problems. You're rebuilding their skills, rebuilding their habits, and they've now had this sustainable game plan that has also clear progress has been made. And then we move into phase 3, which is more them owning the thing long term, with you still being available, still having the accountability. What would you say is the biggest issue you see in phase 3?
So the biggest issue that I see in phase three is when people start seeing success with their goals in nutrition, sometimes they will kind of take a step back or let one thing here fall or another thing there fall.
Okay.
And then that can lead to a significant reduction in their actually consistent habits and goals because they do feel confident in knowing what to do and knowing how to do it, but they choose to be like, oh, well, I'm at my weight that I want to be at. I'm just going to let this sneak in or let this sneak in. And then they might come back and be like, well, Jackie, I'm not doing as great.
More of a problem here than I realized.
But I would always expect that to happen because what's also very interesting is we often improve the quality of someone's diet. So lots of fruits and veggies, or we're improving the amount of times that they're eating throughout the day. So there's noticing that improved energy or just feeling good overall, feeling lighter on their feet. And that starts to become the normal because after phase two, like we've done a lot, right? And when they're in phase three, it feels normal to feel good. And they kind of forget how bad it used to feel. And so I actually think it's really, really good progress when somebody has one of those big setbacks and maybe starts eating the way that they previously did, skipping a bunch of meals or eating a little bit less nutrient dense foods. And then they come back and they're like, I felt so terrible. They're like, how is this how I always used to feel? And that's often like the biggest like click for most people.
Yeah.
Is realizing that's how they used to feel and now their normal is so much better. And so that's actually a big thing that I expect it to happen, especially in phase three, but it's often the thing that helps with that true long-term change because they forgot how bad they used to feel.
It's so interesting. In physical therapy at our place, phase three is where we're really progressing person's activity. And they've also lost a feedback loop. They don't hurt nearly as much or maybe even be gone. It's always when the worst flare-ups happen. It's also the place where people, if you don't prepare them to make them understand that because you feel so much better, you're going to go do this, you're going to do more, you're going to push more, and you're not going to know until maybe the day after that it went sideways on you, they will often think that we don't have the right plan. When really it's a totally natural activity creep. It's totally natural when you feel better. I think it's kind of funny that there's a strong relationship to phase three with our nutrition component or energy component because it's the same thing, right? It's like literally success causes the failure if you're not careful.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, just to make sure, what tells you that they're through phase three and now they're more in the maintenance, moderate, and performance phase?
So for phase three, moving into phase four. So phase three is when we're going to have achieved all of their goals. Their goals, if whether it was introducing new foods to their diet, if it was measuring their energy levels, if it was changing some body composition, improving performance, whatever that looks like, they are going to have achieved their goals pretty much completely by phase three and maintained them for a little bit. Because the last thing I'd want to do moving someone from phase three to phase four is having them know what to do, understanding they've reached the goals, but they haven't been maintained for a while. And so I want them to be maintained for a little bit because the last thing I want, like a fad diet might do, is achieve the goal and then not have it last. And so I want it to have lasted for quite a while, achieved everything, and they have a pretty good understanding, especially when we come into some of our meetings. If they know kind of like, yep, this is what I did, this is why it happened, this went well because I did this, and almost I feel like they're talking like me, and they're the one leading the session, which is what I like, and I want them to get to that point,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Then we move into a maintenance and monitoring phase where just like you go and see your doctor every 6 months or a year just to check in, see how things are going. That's what phase four is really for. I want to be the dietitian that they come to for any nutrition or fueling issue that they have long term. And we know that things can change over a year. We know it can change over a few months. And so just knowing that they can come back to me and having an appointment on the schedule for even if it's 3 or 6 months out, I think it's important to know that they can still check in and maintain their goals in the long term.
Is there anything about your process that I haven't asked about that you want to make sure you talk about?
I don't know. There's so
Anything
much that
else?
goes to
I
it.
know there's a lot of other places we could go, but I do think you've done a really good job, like showing the whole path.
Yeah.
Is there anything, like, if there's somebody who is like thinking about making a change, anything that you would have them do now besides, like, somebody could come and see you, but is there anything that you would say is like the best place to start?
I would say really diving into the reason or the issue that you think you have. Where it's not you, usually the issue is not the first thing that comes to mind. So it's a layered approach. For example, the issue is not usually like we talked about, the issue is not usually I am out of control eating at night.
Yeah.
The issue is often a little bit deeper than that, where I would say, don't just look at the issue, but look at your entire daily habits and try to pick where a piece of that you think truly is leading to you not reaching your goals. So sometimes it's like an emotional piece, right? Where, I just, like, for example, I am completely out of control around sweets or cake. Because that's a very common one that we also say.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Understandable.
Yeah, understandable.
Right? But often that's almost a mental piece where if you feel out of control around certain foods, a lot of times it's because you're labeling them as bad foods and foods that are absolutely not allowed at all. Right? Where if you, but a food isn't like out there committing crimes, right? Like there's no such thing as a good food and a bad food. But if you have that mental idea that cake is bad and I'm not allowed to have it, and if I'm around it, then I will be out of control, then likely when you're around it, you will be out of control. Because you haven't actually addressed that mental load and that piece that you are telling your body that I'm going to be out of control around that food, so I'm not going to have it in the house. Right? But
It's an interesting way to think about it. Yeah.
It's very, nutrition has a lot to do with psychology, and the gut-brain connection is a very, very real thing. Specifically when it comes to like feeling out of control around certain foods. And so that's something that, even though it feels like the sweets are the problem, it's actually the idea behind how you're viewing the sweets as a problem. And so that's something that we would work to address together. But even just having a little bit of that understanding, or knowing it's okay to have this one serving of cake. And that's completely fine, and it's allowed in my diet, and it might not be the most nutrient-dense food, but it has other benefits, right? I am having this cake because it's my son's birthday, and I want to share this experience with him and with my friends and my family. So nutrition is very, there are many factors that go into it, kind of like we discussed, but it's also important just to understand kind of the reason behind why you're making that choice. Which I guess didn't completely answer the question that you asked. I went on a tangent.
A little bit, but I guess how I would interpret some of what you just said is I think that in the investigation of why you feel like you need support, and I think it links back to something you may have mentioned a little bit earlier, is like the symptoms that you may have that may tell you to come in may be different than the actual reason that things are happening. And so the solution can be counterintuitive. So if you feel like you're putting weight on, you want to lose weight, and that's a reason that you come in, that's a symptom. But the actual cause could be that you've been underfueling historically, and the solution may actually be an initial weight gain to help get your metabolism in the right place, followed by building habits that then support
The
weight loss, which I think is pretty interesting. I was obviously really interested in having you on the team to really help with the idea of people who have collapsing tissue capacity, where they keep getting hurt over and over again, which has been pretty remarkable how often people are in this semi overfueling followed by underfueling, and the training trap, like you mentioned earlier, like the doom loop where they underfuel and then they underperform and they overtrain and then they underfuel, and how people go through that cycle. It's interesting how many doom loops there seem to be around nutrition that I was completely unaware of.
And for a lot of people with those recurrent stress fractures or recurrent injuries or tissue capacity that just can't rebuild, people don't realize that it takes a while to actually see a positive change and effect from it. Where a stress fracture, even if it might be feeling a little bit better, let's say you would know a little bit longer, a month out, was that?
Well, yeah, it can depend, but yeah, you can get a stress reaction. Stress fracture is going to take quite a bit longer, but a stress reaction, yeah, we can probably get it under control and back to doing everything within a month for sure.
Where they think that now that they are back to doing everything from the PT perspective and they're allowed to go and do whatever exercise they wanted, that they're completely healed and solved and it's good to go. Where that's when fueling might lack, or they don't realize that their body is still repairing and rehealing, even though you're allowing them to get back to their exercise, right? We often see the recurrent stress reactions if they don't change the thing that initially caused it, if they were under fueling.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy one to blame is your biomechanics or the shoes you're wearing, but that hidden contributor is extremely common in our runners, but in a lot of individuals. And I think it's one of the reasons that you're obviously here. So, is there anything else?
So runners, please,
just so you know,
keep getting your stress reaction.
I'm actually really happy when people hurt themselves. I think everybody knows that. Is there anything else you want to throw out there? You're good.
I think just if we go back over the overview of what the phases are, right? So phase 1 is understanding the issue. We're looking at a whole body perspective, everyone's full daily habits, what they're eating, what they've previously tried, and just getting to know the person as the person that they truly are. And then in phase 2 is when we're actually going to address the issue, where in phase 1, we understand what the issue is. And in phase 2, we're addressing and trying things out to try to solve the issue. A lot of things we do are going to work, and some of the things we do are not going to work. What's important is that we understand why something works or why something doesn't work and adjust according to what's actually doable for that person. And phase 2 is when we're going to reach your goals. So I want those longer term goals to at least be reached to a perspective, but I'm also going to be educating you so you know why what we do is working or what is actually happening in your body so you can adjust it on your own. When we move into phase 3, it's kind of where the client takes the driver's seat, where I am here for the accountability purposes, but I've educated them well enough that they should understand what choices and changes to make. There's always going to be some setbacks and there's always going to be crazy things that come up. And that's also what we talk about in our sessions in phase 3 is what do you have coming up that might alter this, and what are you going to do to make sure that you can still at least stay on track to an extent, right? And kind of get some of those longer term goals and habits established for a while. Before we move into phase 4, which is really just maintenance and monitoring, where you've reached your goals, you have an understanding of nutrition, and now you know a lot more than you did before you came in. And this is just making sure that you're able to maintain this with your lifestyle for a long period of time. Because the habits that we've established aren't meant to just last for a year or 6 months. I want them to last for your entire lifetime. Where if we bring back the conversation of like the meal plans, right? Where if you can't imagine yourself following that specific meal plan for the rest of your life, why do you think it's going to last for the rest of your life?
I want it.
It wouldn't.
You want it.
It wouldn't.
Great stuff. Also, hopefully this gives you a better understanding of what dietitian services look like at Smith Performance Center. This is not about getting a meal plan, like she just said, or tracking macros or being told what foods are good or bad. As Jackie says, they're neither good nor bad. All right. The goal is to understand what is actually getting in the way, then to build a plan that fits you, fits your schedule, fits your training, fits your health history, and your goals. So at SPC, nutrition is part of a bigger system. It's part of our capacity model. Physical therapy helps address pain, injury, tissue tolerance, movement problems. Strength training helps to build your physical capacity, and our dietitian services help support energy, fueling, recovery, health, and the long-term consistency of a good, healthy diet. When these pieces work together, the goals are not just short-term. The goals are to help you build a system that you understand, you can use, and you can maintain. So if you're struggling with energy, recovery, cravings, fueling around workouts, body composition, GI symptoms, or you feel like you keep starting over with nutrition, this may be a good place to start. You can schedule a nutrition initial evaluation with Jackie at Smith Performance Center on our website, or you can call. In that first visit, the goal is to understand where you are now and what's getting in the way and what needs to change. You can also follow Smith Performance Center on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more videos on physical therapy, strength training, nutrition, recovery, and long-term health. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.